good night and good morning, everyone. This is update for July 30, 2022, day 157 of the war, end of the date update. As always, we're going to start with sort of strategic general questions, and then we're going to switch to the frontline situation in Ukraine. So let's actually start first with the nuclear power generation industry. So Russia announced that it's going to provide $20 billion loan to Turkey, under which it will build nuclear power plant to Turkey, and then Turkey will be repaying that loan from the power generations from that nuclear power plant. So what this really means that Turkey is going to be plugged into Russian ecosystem of their supply of the nuclear fuel rods that are used for power plants. So that's one thing. Then we're going to look a little bit more at the nuclear power generation, and then we're going to switch to the US, where the nuclear power industry provides 20% of electricity in the country. And it turns out that its own production of uranium concentrate was essentially shut off starting sometime in looks like it was around like in the 80s, sort of like early 80s or like late 70s, somewhere there. As you can see, US, for whatever reason, there was a decision to shut off internal production of uranium concentrate, and then you can see that it's in 2019 it ground essentially to a halt. There is no data for 2020, and then in 2021 it's totally sort of not sufficient. So as you can see that this used to be like in tens of millions of pounds. Now it's 21,000. So basically what this means is that US actually energy supply is significantly dependent on Russian supply of the uranium concentrate. As we discussed, it's at 28% of the market. And then the reason we're showing these two countries in Africa, Mali and Niger, is because they're actually significant producers and exporters of uranium ore. Then basically uranium ore then it's refined and you produce concentrate. So they're actually large producers, and they supply to France. And the reason we're mentioning this is because if you remember, we discussed Wagner mercenaries and Wagner Group and their sort of business model. This actual situation highlights again their business model. As if some of you may have heard that they operate in Niger and Mali. And the reason they operate there is because there is production of uranium ore, which, again, as you can imagine, Russia is kind of like a cornering world market for uranium ore, and it's trying to help, affect this to basically the Wagner Group is basically used to sort of kind of like create a quasi monopoly, or not monopoly, but like oligopoly, and affect the prices for uranium in the world by trying to kind of obviously hike it as high as possible. And that's why that they are there. They are there on the ground. And so, as you can see, this is the same logic that in many ways this is unique from what we've seen relative to any other private sort of military companies, that they are used not to just like directly earn money, which is also, there is that, but the way they actually used to help Russian large business to gain ground on the international market, to gain larger share, and basically control the prices on the international markets, right? So if you remember, they were in Libya, and then if you remember, there was a strange stoppage of oil production in Libya when Russia needed it earlier in the war. So this is all related. It's because they operated there, so you getting leverage over internal sort of politics and internal economy of the country where they operate. And so, Russia is trying obviously to get that leverage, and then through that leverage, then they can use it to basically threaten France in this case, and ask for sort of diplomatic concessions where they need, let's say, in Ukraine. So this is how it works, and it's to our understanding, this is pretty unique and kind of creative use of this military forces around the world. But as you can see, it again sort of highlights the point that this is all coordinated. They are not just private military company on its own, that this is they are part of the sort of Russian state machine, and they operate sort of like as an orchestra, as the whole machine is operate. So you're gaining basically you're making most money by squeezing world commodity markets and extracting sort of premium for controlling the price on the world commodities markets. And that's sort of another sort of kind of like a touch to explain how they work. Not the motivation, but motivation for ordinary people is obviously money, and then like, okay, we make Russia great and things like that. Paraphrasing, make America great. So, but hopefully that helps to understand how they work in a little bit more detail in more specific example. Now let's switch to another Russian monopoly, which is Gazprom, that is exclusive exporter of natural gas from Russia, and they stop supply of natural gas to Latvia, which is have pretty bad relationship with Russia these days. So that's obviously kind of clear threat there. Then let's actually look at a little bit more what's going on with the power supply in Sweden. Their electricity generation company, they announced that they will have shortages of power and sort of blackouts in Sweden. And probably that's the most concerning, that this is that they said that this is going to happen in the winter. And as you can imagine, winters in Sweden are not very warm. So then let's actually look a little bit more at Russia's internal situation. So there is a shortage of fiber optic in Russia. They do produce it, but they need to use special forms to actually make it, and those forms are coming from Japan, and Japan is not providing those forms to Russia. So now there's a acute shortage of the fiber optic, and fiber optic is essentially means internet. That's the most important use of it that for the economy. And so as you can imagine, in the long run, this is going to be a big problem for Russian economy, for even Russian security, because it's obviously internet is communication is used everywhere, and it's sort of like a brain nerves of that go to the brain essentially. Then let's actually switch to sort of different topic and about military support for Ukraine, or actually Ukraine signed a deal with Poland to buy. Let's actually switch to Ukraine. So Ukraine signed a deal with Poland to buy 60 Crabs, those self-propelled howitzers that are excellent. And so Ukraine got 8 of them one of these days. So that brings the number of Crabs in Ukrainian disposal to at least 36, and potentially there is more than 36, could be up to 40. So somewhere between minimum is 36, could be as high as 40, maybe a little bit higher. So even, let's say we spoke about those PH2000, that there are some technical issues there, which many people provided comments, and super grateful for that, because it provides a lot of sort of color and understanding. So what it really helps is to offset the losses due to that malfunctioning. And what this really means that Ukraine still maintains clear advantage over Russian artillery in the long range sort of systems, and specifically precision, because that's what Russian side is lacking. They lack precision. We discussed that they rely on quantity, not quality. and the crabs is example of relying on quality, right, to win the war. So that's a sort of update on that. Then Ukrainian government announced to all people in the um, Donetsk region that Ukraine government still controls. They are asked to leave the area because there is no ability to supply. Basically, infrastructure is destroyed. There is no ability to supply natural gas. There is no and then also limited abilities to supply electricity. So basically, you cannot. The government basically says we cannot provide for you in terms of infrastructure, and we cannot provide to you, especially during the winter, right? So this whole area is looks like it's going to turn into, let's say, no man's land, literally, because something similar is happening on all of these captured territories where destroyed infrastructure. Russia definitely will not be able to fix that infrastructure, specifically Mariupol and then Severodonetsk, Rubizhne, Lysychansk, all of those towns. And so once it sort of survives through the winter, not survives, but stays through the winter in that state, it's essentially needs to be replaced, and that's super expensive. So this looks like the whole sort of this part of the Donbass region is gonna sort of face this similar fate. Maybe not. Maybe they can conserve it somehow, so it's sort of safer, and they can the systems can survive winter in sort of better shape and so on. But it's definitely very concerning sign and of sort of probably where it's all going and what's coming. So then other topic. Actually, let's switch to the sort of actually last one thing that I forgot to mention is that Russia is essentially kind of doing. We couldn't even say it's a stealth mobilization, but sort of maybe like call it partial mobilization or whatever, some kind of hybrid mobilization. We don't know what's the best word for it. But basically, every region in Russia is required to provide at least a battalion to the front line in Ukraine, and many of those battalions, because Russia consists, I think, from about it consists of about 80 plus regions. So if I could be totally wrong, could be a little bit less, but essentially it's somewhere between 50 and 80, and a lot of them are people don't understand, but Russia is also quite multi-ethnic country in many ways. So it's not just like, okay, Russians. That's how it's perceived from outside. But Russia has a lot of call it like ethnic sort of groups or whatever you call it, ethnic regions. And so the big concern in Russia that a lot of these battalions are going to be sort of ethnic units. So like it's going to be battalion from Buryatia or Tuva or whatever else, or from Tatarstan, right? So there's a lot of concern about that could create sort of like local nationalism and desire to sort of separatist desires in Russia. Nevertheless, that's what's being done, and obviously it's done because you are under pressure, and sort of that's the only option. The other option that's being done is actually, and this is we have information from Novosibirsk region, which is obviously in Siberia, as you can imagine from the name, in Russia. So that the managers of many factories there, they got sort of requests from the local government, and that comes from the central government in Moscow, to kind of like form battalions as well from the workers to send to the front line to Ukraine. So that's how it looks like. It's kind of like the hole that's been created over the past months in the Russian ranks. That looks like there is attempt to fill it this way. This is certainly is not going to be enough, because we don't think that every single region will provide like full battalion, and it's probably going to be a lot of it is going to be just like, oh, it's let's say a company or two companies, check mark, I did it, we too small, we cannot provide whatever. Like it's definitely it's definitely not gonna sort of plug the hole. Not to mention that like forming this units in a way like either by like sort of regional or ethnic ways or by like a factory way is a kind of sign of like inability to actually integrate those people into like existing units and create actually coherent units. So it's more like a sign of sort of the like that the system is a little bit like falling, not falling apart in a really big way, but there's some kind of cracks in the sort of like this military supply management and sort of this system of refilling the existing units. So that's a situation with those with sort of general information. Now let's actually switch to the front line. Let's actually start the walkthrough. We just want to mention that HIMARS systems attacked Russian ammunition depot in Nova Kakhovka, which was destroyed. So that was the biggest notable sort of achievement for Ukrainian forces. Otherwise, there is no new hits at those bridges, and I will go through those bridges in more detail because there was a lot of complaints from people when I said that the railroad bridge is south of Antonievsky Bridge, which is I was wrong, and it's actually north of Antonievsky Bridge. But the whole point that I'm trying to make is it doesn't matter if it's 3 kilometers south or 5 kilometers north. The point is about the supply of the Russian troops on the bridgehead, and that's what I'm trying to trying to explain. I'm not trying to sort of pick on where exactly the bridge. It's largely honestly irrelevant as long as it's damaged, and it looks like that railroad bridge was damaged significantly enough. On the other side, the sort of road or that small bridge near the dam was actually repaired and is being used by Russian troops to resupply. So Antonievsky Bridge is obviously dead, as we understand and we know, but that dam is still functioning. But as you can imagine, it's a fraction of throughput that sort of original all of the bridges could provide. And obviously, the biggest sort of loss from a point of view of ammunition is railroad bridge, because that's how you deliver ammunition. It's bulky, it's heavy, so the railroad is the most cheapest, most efficient way to deliver ammunition to the front line, and that's the biggest sort of loss from all of this. Nevertheless, the supply is not completely destroyed. It's still functioning, but it's definitely not functioning perfectly, and we're sure there will be more attacks until this whole logistic system is completely broken down. So again, as we discussed, it's going to be like a death by thousand cuts. It's going to be a slow process that probably will take weeks before we see results on the front line, if not even months, could be even as long as months. So and now let's actually jump into walks through the front line. We're going to start from the very north and then move in a clockwise fashion. So as always, there is exchange of fire along the border, but nothing really new here. It's all standard and typical. Then let's move to Kharkiv region. Here things are totally positional and quiet. Now let's move south. Let's move to Izyum bridgehead. There was some activity by Russian troops here in this kind of like western section of it. They attacked village Dmitrivka, and then they just tried to attack along the road to Barvinkova. The attacks were not successful, and our understanding this is more like kind of like a distraction to keep Ukrainian troops in this area so that they are not transferred to the places where the main action is, which, as you know, it's in North Donbass front line, and then also front line west of Donetsk. So now let's actually move to the North Donbass front line and see what's going on there. The northern section, as we observed for a while, is getting really quieter and quieter. So there was nothing there. So the focus is really clearly in the southern section of it. So Russian troops were attacking towards Bakhmutske today, towards Soledar essentially. That's their goal here, without success in this area. However, they were successful in their sort of this the most southern section of it. So as you can see, they gained some ground towards village Zaitseve. They had also attacked Vershina without success, and then they managed to capture village Semygirya, which we also, predicted probably 3 or 4 days ago that this is going to fall pretty soon, and that's how it's happening here. Then they also attacked towards this village Travneva. So it does look like they slowly but surely, chewing up village by village, probably every other day or once in 3 days, they capture village. Also, notice that all of these gains essentially happening in the sort of the sector of where Wagner mercenaries are responsible, for which Wagner mercenaries are responsible. And this also will probably would like to sort of highlight this importance of not only motivation, which is, mostly Ukrainian troops are very motivated because they're obviously defending their own territory, but what is important difference between, let's say, motivated Ukrainian troops trained some kind of like some okay, some not great at all. So there is no sort of kind of like it's not let's say not the same level of training. It's very different, varies quite a bit from unit to unit. It could be from even like battalion to battalion, even company to company. So it's really like a patchy. However, Wagner mercenaries are definitely better trained, but the most important difference, in our opinion, it's obviously, and we can discuss it in a discussion section, is that Wagner mercenaries, they essentially don't have bureaucracy, right? It's kind of like a common sense. So they giving sort of free reign to pick the targets where they think is the best, which sort of sequence they're gonna attack, and how they're gonna do it. So they have like sort of free hand type of situation. And that's probably why, in our opinion, there is a significant advantage over Ukrainian troops, which are motivated, but it's all super bureaucratic, super rigid. There is no this active defense that we discussed, and that really where how they manage to probably attack and be successful. And especially we want to highlight this point that they are fewer in numbers, so they're attacking larger forces simply in size in terms of number of troops. They obviously their artillery side of equation definitely on their side, there's no question about it, but in terms of sheer number of simply people on the ground, they are outnumbered. So now let's actually move south and look what's going on west of Donetsk. So as we discussed, this is somehow this was chosen as another sort of major focus or major area for Russian offensive. So as you can see, the offensive is happening along their more or less entire front line. It does happen though in sort of all typical traditional areas, which is the Russian troops trying to capture Avdiyivka, then they attacking straight force from the area straight forward, or I guess north west a little bit from the area of Donetsk International Airport. Then they attacking towards Maryinka. They trying to capture the Nova Kakhovka, and then the last area is they trying to capture Vugledar, which is a cornerstone of the sort of this kind of like a defensive line here in this area. They so far they don't have major sort of gains, but they do actually have some small tiny gains. So like we learned that, like, let's say they captured like one street in this village Piski. So we'll sort of zoom in once there is more information. There are sort of tiny small gains here and there, but they're not like breaches of defensive positions. So it's more like a tactical fight to capture like 100 meters of the ground or 150 meters of the ground. So, and that can change sort of definitely, if let's say Ukrainian troops do counterattack, or even 150 meters is just really not meaningful for now. But we just want to inform you that this is what's happening there. Now let's quickly jump to Zaporizhia front line. Things here are totally static, nothing changes. It's all positional defenses. Now let's actually move to Kherson bridgehead and let's see what's going on there. So again, as I mentioned, so this is this Antonievsky bridge, right? So the railroad bridge is somewhere around here, so a little bit north, and sort of, okay, if someone will be picking up that it's actually technically going northeast, okay, fine, but from just perspective is like looking that Dnipro River goes from north to south, so that's the whole point. That why I'm saying, if it's oversimplification, fine, you can say it's towards northeast of the Antonievsky Bridge. Anyway, so just to kind of recap what I said at the very beginning is that Antonievsky Bridge is essentially done. It's not destroyed, but it's damaged enough so you can really use it. This railroad bridge is damaged, but and it does look like it's pretty significant structural damage, meaning structure, not this sort of this like a support of the bridge, but well, I guess I'm not sure. I don't know well. I guess I'm lacking English language right now. English word to describe those like pillars. I guess maybe that's what you call. And they obviously not damaged, but the damage to the sort of the embankment of the bridge, and that may mean significant structural damage, so that you cannot put a train over it, because obviously train is much heavier than the truck or anything. It's dwarfs the size, the weight of the truck. So essentially that's probably, in our bet, is no longer usable. Obviously this bridge near Avdiyivka is also essentially not usable. It's not destroyed, but it's not usable. This is where Russian troops, and we showed you probably like 4 or 5 days ago, where they were quickly repairing the damage that was done to the bridge that sort of over the channel that allows the ships to go up and down the river. So basically, it's not the dam. The road on the dam is not damaged, but there is a sort of small bridge there, and so that one apparently was repaired, and there is railroad that goes parallel to it. So there is still this main remaining supply line for the Russian troops on the bridgehead. But in any case, the sort of flow of the blood is slowing and it's less. And so eventually we will see effects of that on the front line. Plus, as we discussed, there was ammunition depot that was destroyed in Nova Kakhovka, so that also creates additional problems. But where we probably should be able to see more sort of damage and sooner damage in this section, because it's essentially kind of like cut off, and it's basically bridgehead on its own at this point. And supply here is really super hard, because you're really just relying on pontoon bridge, which is throughput is super small. There are reports actually that Russian troops are sort of assembling and disassembling the pontoon bridge, which a little bit surprises us because we're not experts in it, but it seems to us that it takes quite a bit to assemble it, to sort of set it up. But maybe some expert can chime in and just educate us in terms of timing, because it doesn't look to us that you can do it in 1 hour. You probably need much more than 1 hour. So we're not clear if that information is sort of misinformation, or there's actually tactic that is being used by Russian troops here for this pontoon bridge in this area. At the same time, additional news in this area: Russian troops were preparing to attack again Ukrainian bridgehead here, but the attack was disrupted by the hit of Ukrainian artillery at the attacking forces. We don't know the casualties or any details of that. All we just know that the attack was disrupted, and this also kind of tells us a little bit that Now you don't see the situation where Russian artillery totally sort of controls the area and controls the situation and initiative there. It looks like the initiative in this case was on Ukrainian side, on the side of Ukrainian artillery, which might be the first sign of this sort of slowdown of supply of Russian troops on the bridgehead, and maybe sort of first crack in the situation in this area, because it's very clear that even if it's a baby step, but the initiative was on Ukrainian side in this specific situation. Thanks for watching again, and until tomorrow, bye bye.